Shalom, this is Avi Lipkin with the, I don't want to say the weekly update. It seems like we're moving it up to 2 updates a week now. But today's update, today is December the 9th, 2013. We are today commemorating the 1,000 days of civil war in Syria. And what I want to do is, I want to start first with some statistics, some numbers that were in the media today. I don't know if any of you out in America or in other countries in the West have gotten this information, but the civil war in Syria to date has cost the following: 128,000 dead Syrians, for which we mourn, for whom we mourn, 3,500 refugees, Syrian people, that's about 20% of the population, had to flee Syria to other countries because the population was 20 million. 3.5 million have fled. And you have 3 million homes in Syria which have been destroyed, probably not to be rebuilt. These are some horrible, horrible statistics. It's a horrible war. Isaiah 17 verse 1 talks about the destruction of Damascus in 1 day. But you know, 1,000 days for the human being, today's 1,000 days, is like 1 day for God. And we see Damascus being destroyed. And I personally do not celebrate the destruction of Damascus. I personally do not celebrate the death of any human being, whether it be Jew, Christian, Muslim, or otherwise. And so I mourn for these people. And I want to try to go to the roots of why these people are being killed. What is the reality in Syria today? And so I think we should review this. And I want to start with one of my favorite punching bags, and her name is Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State from 2009 until the re-election of President Obama. And I've been watching her like a hawk over the last few decades, and I myself am originally from New York. And Hillary Clinton is attacking Israel and attacking Israel and attacking Israel. Why is Israel building 100 homes in this neighborhood? Why is Israel building 200 homes in this neighborhood? Oh, the horrors of these Israeli settlers, Jerusalem, the Palestinian state, the Palestinian refugees. Israel, Israel, Israel is to be blamed for everything. And that's nothing new, because the State Department for the last 30, 40 years has always behaved like that. So Hillary Clinton isn't anything new. And then in February of 2011, 2 years after Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State, something very interesting happened. A Tunisian fruit vendor was pushing his cart in some little town in Tunisia. And he got arrested for not having a license to sell his produce. Basically, the policeman didn't care about the license. He wanted bakshish. He wanted a bribe, a tip, a payoff. And this poor fruit and vegetable vendor said, I never had a license, nor will I ever. They arrested him, confiscated his cart, confiscated his produce, confiscated the scales on which he would weigh his fruit. He left the jail after a Tunisian policewoman slapped him in the face, the ultimate insult to a Muslim man. He lost his honor, he lost his income, he lost his property. He poured gasoline all over his body, and he self-immolated, and he died. And meanwhile, the Tunisians, who are very, very much under the French influence, who all have cell phones, were taking video, footage of this fruit vendor burning to death. And within minutes, Tunisia was up in flames. Within minutes. This was the beginning of the Arab Spring. It had nothing to do with Israel. It had nothing to do with the Jews or the settlers or the Palestinian question. It had nothing to do with America. It was entirely an internal question of corruption in high places. And Ben Ali, the president of Tunisia, was a very corrupt man, and he and his followers stole billions of dollars from the people of Tunisia. And this was the beginning of the Arab Spring. It's interesting that Hillary Clinton never spoke about the millions and millions of black people in Africa who were slaughtered in Sudan, in Nigeria, in Liberia, in Ivory Coast, and other countries. All she could talk about was how horrible Israel was because it built 100 homes in some neighborhood in Jerusalem. And the Arab Spring spread from Tunisia the next day to Libya. And Gaddafi was gone. So Ben Ali in Tunisia was gone, Gaddafi was gone, and then to Egypt. Mubarak was gone. Mubarak, the great ally of the West, the great ally of the United States. And President Obama supported the Muslim Brotherhood to destroy an ally of the United States. And then it spread to Yemen. And then it spread to Syria. So now we're going to be talking a little while about Syria. But I wanted first to talk about the Arab Spring. I don't play cards, but I know that in the game of cards, when you're not happy with the deck, you reshuffle the deck. And I believe that God is a great reshuffler of the deck. The cards are stacked against Israel. And every time people in the United States or Canada or Europe or Russia or China or Japan, many people say the tsunami, the great horrible tsunami in Fukushima came to Japan a day or two after the Japanese government decided to turn against Israel and go with the Palestinians. I'm not talking about the American people or Christians in general. I'm talking about governments that are corrupted by bribery given to them by the Muslims. And so all of a sudden we see the whole world being turned upside down by God. I don't know how many of you live in the United States, those of you who are watching this, or live in other countries. But today in the United States, those people who are Christians are considered terrorists by the US administration. And those people, Jews and Christians who believe in the Bible, are considered mentally insane by the US government and are being purged from the military and from the high places. Because to believe in God is a mentally unstable thing. That's what they say. Now, 3 years ago, we're now in December of 2013. If I had come and done this YouTube in December of 2010, you'd say I was mentally insane. Why? Because I believe in the Bible. I believe in God. I believe in Isaiah 19, verses 1 and 2. What does Isaiah 19, 1 and 2 say? Egyptian will fight Egyptian. Brother will fight brother. City will fight city. It's horrible. How could we believe that neighbor will fight neighbor and brother will fight brother and Egyptian will fight Egyptian? Don't forget, exactly 3 years ago, this time Mubarak was ruling Egypt. There was peace, there was quiet, there was stability. And anyone who would quote Isaiah 19, 1 and 2 would be considered mentally insane. And this is a prophecy of God that came true. There's a chapter 29 in Ezekiel that says that Egypt will become a desolation. Egypt will become a desolation? This has never happened. So, of course, if I believe that Egypt will become a desolation, I'm mentally insane and mentally unstable. It says in Ezekiel 29 that no human foot or no animal will tread in the Nile Valley for 40 years. Meaning, it'll be a desolation from Aswan, basically the Aswan Dam, all the way down to Migdol, which is in the Mediterranean. So this is a prophecy that has not yet been fulfilled. It does not say the Egyptians will be killed. It says the Egyptians will be scattered to the four corners of the earth. And so what do we see happening? We see today 80 million Muslims in Egypt versus 10 million Coptic Christians, and the Muslim Brotherhood and the fanatic Salafists, and even the military, their plan is to take the 10 million Coptic Christians and either kill them, convert them to Islam, or expel them. And the Christians, because they're the backbone of the economy, they control the economy. When the Christians die or flee from Egypt, it'll be the end of the Egyptian economy. When the Egyptian economy goes, the Muslims, the 80 million who remain, will starve. When the 80 million starve, they leave. Where do they go? To America. And I've predicted, I've said this in the past, I believe 50 million of the 80 million Egyptian Muslims are going to move to the United States of America. America has plenty of room for them. And for those of you who have never heard of Agenda 21, I recommend that you look up Agenda 21 because it explains there exactly how the Muslims coming from Egypt will be resettled in the United States and in Canada and Mexico and Brazil and Argentina and all over Europe. So God is still reshuffling the deck. God is going to depopulate Egypt as they destroy their economy by destroying their Christians. So let's go to Syria. What do we see in Syria? We see Sunnis versus Shiites, but it's not so simple because the Shiites are 10% of Syria, the Christians are 10%, and then you've got certain Sunnis and others who back Bashar al-Assad's government, which is about 50%. So when you have a civil war of 50% of the population versus the other 50%, and then you have all of these powers getting involved, in other words, the top level supporting Bashar al-Assad is Russia and China, but then you have Iran, the Shiites of Iraq, and Hezbollah of Lebanon coming in on the side of Bashar al-Assad. And as opposing Bashar al-Assad, you have the Free Syrian Army, which is secular. Then you have the Jabhat al-Nusra and the Al-Qaeda and the Turks and the Egyptians and the Saudis and others and the United States government backing the forces fighting Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad is defending his Christians. The side that America is backing, just like in Egypt, is there to destroy the Christians. And yet most people don't understand what this is all about in the United States. Most people don't really understand the forces at play. And this is what I'm trying to explain here. It's a horrible situation. And I know our time is running out, and I wanted to conclude with something which comes from the Bible. Again, if you believe in the Bible, of course, you know, you're mentally insane. It's called 2 Chronicles chapter 20. And I'm a Jew who learned 2 Chronicles chapter 20 from the Christians. 2 Chronicles chapter 20 talks about 3 armies that were besieging Jerusalem. You had the army of Ammon. Ammon is Amman, Jordan. The army of Moab. Moab is South Jordan. And the army of Seir. 3 armies. And don't forget, Ammon and Moab are descended from Lot. Lot was the nephew of Abraham. Seir, this is the army of Ishmael and Midian. These are all family members who are coming to fight us. They hate us because we got the chosen blessing of God. We were anointed of God and they were not. So there's always this envy in every family of those who envy those other siblings that were blessed and anointed. And there was no way that the Israelites, the Jews, could defeat these 3 armies that were besieging Jerusalem. They came to King Jehoshaphat and they said to King Jehoshaphat, well, what should we do? How can we get out of this situation? And Jehoshaphat said, go to the temple in Jerusalem, go to the high priest, prostrate, get on your faces before the Lord, and pray to the Lord and ask for the Lord's deliverance. And that's what the people did. The next morning, they opened the gates of the city, and lo and behold, the 3 armies that were besieging Jerusalem slaughtered each other to the last man. Nobody was left. God says in Genesis, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Those people who bless Israel will be blessed. Those people who curse Israel will be cursed. Syria was absolutely the most adamant, implacable enemy of Israel until the Arab Spring. And I think God is dealing with Syria. I mourn for the people as individuals, just as I mourn for the soldiers of Moab and Ammon and Seir who all died because they came to fight Israel. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And the battle with these 3 armies is history now. Those who came against Israel were destroyed directly by the hand of God. Today, the Shiites and the Sunnis are slaughtering each other. This is the hand of God going against the enemies of Israel. The one thing that unites the Shiites and the Sunnis is they hate Israel, they hate the Jews. The only, how shall I say, only plus for Bashar al-Assad is that he's the defender of the Christians. And sometimes I can't understand how in the United States today they say if you're a Christian, you are a terrorist. If you believe in the Bible, you are mentally insane, where the United States used to be a Christian country. No more. And today, Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, says that what made Russia great was its Christianity. And you know what? If you're someone who came from America, that is something very scary. And I walk through the streets of old city of Jerusalem, and my Christian friends who are merchants all stop me and say, why does America support the Sunni terrorists, and why are the Russians the liberators of the Christians and the defenders of the Christians? So these are things I think we have to look at when we look at the 1,000 days of war in Syria. This war in Syria will never end. There is no forgiveness and there is no love in Islam.